call our July study session and regular meeting to order, and let the record reflect that all board members are present except for Mr. Hosmer. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have a special recognition tonight, and Dr. Ritter.
Yes, John, Mr. Evers.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Ritter. This award is from the Government Finance Officers Association and is for a comprehensive annual financial report. This is a national award that is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. This is the fourth piece of what we call our annual Pinafecta. In addition to this award, we've also received the Association of School Business Officials Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, and for our financial statements, and the Distinguished Budget Book Awards from both the GFOA and ASBO. We've also submitted our popular annual financial report to GFOA and are awaiting results of that award. If we receive that award, this will be the fourth year in a row that we received all 5 awards, and we'd be the only district in the state once again to do that. So, I'd like to thank and congratulate our finance department for their work on the projects, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any members of your staff that are here? Or I know summer's kind of vacation time. Well, congratulations. Any board members have any questions? This is becoming a very nice routine that we're used to year after year, so thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Madam President, I'd like to, on behalf of administration, like to pull 8.01, that's a technology bond project vendor selection for a network upgrade project. I'd like to pull that and table it for now.
Wouldn't really be tabled, but we'll just remove it from the agenda.
From the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And we anticipate then having that come back to us.
Right, in August.
Okay, great. Any other modifications to the agenda? I know we have a very short agenda tonight, which is kind of nice, and that kind of leads into my report. First of all, I'd like to thank all the board members, and Mr. Hosmer was there as well as our administrative team that took 5 hours out of your busy schedules to participate in our summer retreat last week. Was ably facilitated by Mrs. Moore. Thank you, Mrs. Moore, for that. Particularly thank you to the board members who gave of them themselves and the energy and the ideas that were circulated. I think we made some progress in terms of that. Also that we've been using this President's Report time to kind of talk about any time that we've been in the community or in schools. I know summertime's a little bit difficult for that. I was at Good Morning Springfield last week, and I know I've had a couple board members ask me about that. Certainly that would be something that we would encourage any or all board members to attend. It's typically held on the first Thursday of the month at 7:30, and next month is August 1st, and it's at the ice park.
It's a county update.
And it will be the county update. So it's just a good time for us to be there. And the crowd is usually large enough for us each to have an opportunity to interact with a wide variety of people. So I would encourage that. Are there any other times that I know, Mrs. Bush, you've been involved in the Every Child Initiative. Continue to be involved in that.
Yes, today at Rotary, Dave Stepler, the editor, did give an update of their Every Child Initiative, allowed Roseanne Bentley and Maury Macklin and I to talk a little bit about the impact of poverty on school-age and early childhood children, and I think started a really good dialogue with the Downtown Rotary group, and I hope that that dialogue can continue into the future.
Excellent. Anything else? Well, next month will be the beginning of school, August 14th, so I think there'll be some opportunities to be in schools. I know I'm going to address the, I guess it's new teachers, is that what it is, Mrs. Luton? So can't believe that's just around the corner. So. With that said, Dr. Ritter, your report?
Just to let you know, that's also the leadership you're going to be addressing.
Oh, okay.
Leadership. We had a cabinet retreat, a 2-day cabinet retreat, it's the longest we've ever had. We've covered an awful lot of ground, especially for everything from cabinet evaluations to missions and vision as far as cabinet itself. We've already changed our behavior as far as our meetings are concerned, and very focused meetings, and some challenges around that. Another thing that we are finding as far as our conversation, our main goal was to call for more transparency and more integration amongst the cabinet, and we already are moving that way, and that was a major part of our conversation. So that was very, very good. Also, you mentioned the start of school. It was August 14th. I've only had one complaint from a parent, and I mentioned it at Good Morning Springfield that I think it was a disguised senior who didn't want to start too early. But anyway, but other than that, everybody's really excited and really surprised that school is going to start. But I want to remind everybody that we did dismiss earlier than anybody else as well. Other than that, we do have quite a shift in leadership, and so making that happen, and I think it's very exciting, much of the leadership that's going on at our sites. I did spend a little time today at Glendale because of the tragedy and a lot of the things that are happening in Glendale, and things are really on course there and going very well. So other than that, that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the part of our agenda that is public comments to address agenda items. I have one speaker that's here to address agenda items, and then we will have a couple other speakers at the end of the meeting to address the board on non-agenda items. So with that, I will just say that the Board of Education welcomes comments from the audience about issues being discussed. It is recommended that requests to speak be submitted prior to the beginning of the meeting, which these all have. Comments will be limited with public comments to address agenda items, 5 minutes for each speaker, 3 minutes for non-agenda items, and will be timed by the president, although you'll also see a clock type of, a digital type of timekeeping device at the bottom of the screens to help you. And I will be, I will draw people to a close at the end of those time limits. It is inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed through the appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or in the district office. So we appreciate you abiding by those guidelines, and we're glad that you're here to address the board. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Mutro to come forward.
Thank you, board members, for giving me this opportunity to speak. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all of you for your volunteer work to the community as members of the school board. It's obvious you care a tremendous amount about public education. Again, my name is Ruben Mutro, and I'm the Division Sales Manager with Republic Services. I asked to speak with you because I respectfully take exception to the methods used by purchasing to determine how they calculate a low bid. Before I get to that, though, I'd like to draw your attention to the information that we provided in the bid package. 3 years ago, the administration came to us, reached out to us, and asked us about our programs. You were looking to specifically advance your recycling efforts. We also we demonstrated our commitment to your goal by giving each classroom a recycle bin with no expectation of a return. So whatever happens tonight, you guys get to keep those. We also got creative and customized some polycarts so that each classroom and each school can recycle paper. In addition to that, because our trucks have scales on them, we're able to produce a monthly report to you guys detailing all of your recycle efforts on a monthly basis, which I know the feedback was really good, and that was published locally and all that stuff. I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever attended one, but we also have held several events throughout the 3 years where we actually come out to the school with one of our trucks, and we do this to promote education and safety. Have you guys ever attended any of those? Yeah, the kids really like it. They come out and they get to see the truck. We introduce them to Garbage Gus and Recycle Rosie. I did detail a lot of those, some pictures and photographs and testimonials in the bid package that you guys received. We really tried to go above and beyond with you guys to prove our worth. With regard to the purchase department's calculations, the RFP that we received requested a weekly price for service. And the spreadsheet that you guys received from purchasing, you can see that our weekly price is $2,105.76. WCA's was $2,178.70. Our weekly price is about $73 lower. I'd like to bring your attention to section 11.2 on page 10 of the RFP. Referring to attachment A, it states, and I quote, "The total price will be used to determine low bid." This total price is a weekly cost. The recommendation of the board should have been based off of this number. Instead, I think what happened was after the sealed bids were opened and read, the purchasing department essentially asked all parties that bid how many weeks there are in a year. We naturally replied that there's 52 weeks in a year. WCA replied that there are 48 weeks, giving them a supposed lower annual cost and the ability to, in effect, change their offering after the fact. I did take the liberty to ask several students in the district how many weeks there are, and they all responded 52, thankfully. I do have one final point. The plain truth is the district does not receive full service 52 or 48 weeks a year. Last year, the total weeks of service, full service, were approximately 44. Using our current bid and leaving some room for service changes, the approximate annual cost for this coming year will be around $97,000. But you're voting for a different number tonight, which is, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to us. The RFP states that attachment A will be used to determine the low bid, which specifically asks for a weekly rate. We at Republic Services have a proven track record, a great relationship, and we were the lowest bid. I just ask you to award this accordingly. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
We don't typically
Okay,
engage
that's
the
fine.
speaker. We'll take your comments into consideration as we have our discussion about the agenda item.
Wonderful.
But
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah. Mrs. Luton, any other speakers on agenda items? Okay. On an agenda item? Have you turned in your name to Mrs. Luton? Okay. If you do that, I'll let you speak at the end of the meeting in the time where we allow public comment on non-agenda items.
I appreciate that. I think it would be very valuable if I was able to speak prior to that.
Well, do you have a form that you can fill out? And
Kristen already made out.
oh, okay. Okay, come to the podium and address the board then. And please state who you are and who you're representing.
My name is John Schwendeman. I'm with the Hewlett-Packard Corporation, and I'm here on action item 8.01, the technology bond project.
That's actually been removed from the agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. But I will just say, if you have concerns about that, I would just.
We formally submitted a protest.
Okay, all right, that's what we anticipated. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to information section 7. Mr. Wendt.
Excuse me one moment. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Dr. Ritter, it's my pleasure to present to you this evening an update on the 2009 bond projects.
You received, or the attached full report is attached. Excuse me. This will be the last time I make a formal presentation actually on the 2009 projects. The next quarter will shift to the 2013 projects. However, there will be a financial closing statement of the 2009 projects in the next quarter as we finish that out. Tonight I wanted to highlight the main three projects that made up the 2009 projects. Hillcrest as part of that. Each of the three projects did have a FEMA safe room, and I did want to report that on July 2nd we received a visit, and SEMA came and actually did an inspection of all of our safe room sites, and we're very pleased with what they saw, and we're waiting their official response as they go back and review the paperwork. So we're very pleased with that. As we look at that Hillcrest project, there is the safe room was one of the components to that. See it from the other side, which was attached. We had a new entryway that was put onto the facility to actually bring attention to where the main entrance is into the facility. This was some of the classroom space that was taken from the old cafeteria area and was renovated into classroom space. This was part of the attachment from the existing building to the new safe room, where you see the serving area for the new kitchen. And this is inside that new safe room, and you can also see the stained polished concrete that we had inside there. One of the things that when they did the inspection on our room that they noted, this was the first safe room where they saw the design that had come forward, where there's actually with hitting a button, you see all the windows throughout that cafeteria space. All those are closed down with doors and locked and sealed up, which is a requirement of that safe room. And so they were very impressed with how the design team came up with that process. We also did renovation within the auditorium. You can see on the bottom right when it was gutted. The final thing to be installed, we're still waiting, believe it or not, on the actual carpet for the aisles. There's a new sound booth in the back of the auditorium. An elevator was put on the Hyper, and then we have some new lockers in the Hyper. The remaining things to be completed on the project, as I said, was the carpet in the auditorium, which will be in place before school starts, and there's some lockers that need to be repainted because they had some problems in the finish with that. But those are the main pieces left to be completed on Hillcrest, so we're very pleased with that project. As we look at Jeffries, another safe room project, and here we look, you see the main safe room there, and then the new administration area by bringing that entrance out. Here's once you come inside and come through that safety vestibule, this is the where the receptionist, secretary sits, and the administrative offices. This is that waiting area by the receptionist. As you come around, the back of that is actually a conference room there in the front. And then, of course, the actual safe room itself, which is the gymnasium that we added to the project, which came out very nice. And their final shot. This was these photos were actually taken from a professional photographer by the architect. And that is actually the moon in there. They timed it quite well. Now Westport, as exciting as it's all coming together now, the memorial stone, or monument stone, excuse me, has been placed out front for the project. As you come in the new front doors, Mr. 2 there, and the new administrative offices there to the left as you come in the front door. To the right is where that commons, cafeteria area, the seating area for the middle school, and the new serving area for the middle school. One of the things that we've been doing a lot in this bond series is the stained polished concrete, a more sustainable approach in saving maintenance and operating costs down the road. This is actually at the entrance to the new library. Now, the new library is actually what the old all-purpose room was, and I'll show you a couple of before and after. Here, as you come in, you'll see the suspended cloud ceilings, as they refer to when they drop the ceiling tiles. It's hard to tell in the lighting in this picture, but it's framed in wood, nicely done, and you can see with the designs that they've put around the walls to help with sound, and then the carpet. This is actually where the old kitchen area was underneath that, and that will be actually a reading nook in there, and the new circulation desk area. Now here was the before, and then this was some of the work that had to be done structurally to be able to open that wall up, to be able to remove that wall for the kitchen, and again the after, and we'll get past the construction debris laying there, but it's all coming together. This space was one of the last spaces that we could work in. We had to wait till school was out from the prior year before the contractor could actually get in and start in this space. So DeWitt has done an outstanding job in being able to pull this together. One more before shot, and you can see where the new circulation desk area is. This is a renovated classroom, which is now going to be the 8th grade art room. The sink actually came from Studi. Down on the right, you see some of the new equipment, a new kiln. This was the new mascot, and that put in the gymnasium. Now, this photo is actually of the old library, which has now been converted to the elementary gymnasium. And just noticing the truss work that was put in place to be able to eliminate the columns and open up that space, it did an outstanding, and it really has come out nice. To the right there, the series of doors through there allows access to the elementary serving area of the kitchen. And the new playground, which is outside, which actually is on the parks property right next to the pool. The final work on the front canopy is just to put the metal panels on that main upper canopy area. The other is completed, and that's what's in these crates here in front. And here you can see with the landscaping and how that front area will look. It's really nice. And just as far as the technology bond update, I mentioned at the last quarter that they were complete with all the smart board and projector installations. And just to say thank you to our community for their support in us being able to complete these wonderful projects, and we're really excited about the next projects to come. And with that, if there are any questions.
How did you come out finance-wise with the bond money versus what was spent?
Actually, we're finishing up the final because we had some overage to cover from the previous bond, which was taken care of. We did anticipate overage because of the Westport project, as we did, and so now we're finalizing those numbers to see exactly as we close out the financials. It'll be between $1 and $1.5 million will be the difference when we're completed.
Plus or minus?
Over.
Over.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so if you take into account from the previous and with the 2.5 anticipated overage on Westport, we made up a lot of ground in that to get it to where it's going to be between 1 and 1.5.
On a $100 million part, how much was the total?
This was a 70.
This was the 70.
No, I'm sorry.
50.
This was a 50. I'm
Plus
getting
4.
my bonds confused. Sorry.
Plus 4.5 on FEMA money.
Yes, we did receive
So your
FEMA help.
overage is 2.2%, and that's with the increased scope of Westport. So if the numbers, you don't have anticipate a huge number of new expenses coming in, do you?
No. No.
I have a question about Hillcrest. I had the opportunity to visit Hillcrest last May, and I noticed that in the student center area, there were still a few things, and maybe those have been taken care of, but I did want to ask you about that. There was still some work to be done on the asbestos tiles in that student center area, and also there was still plywood covering some of the skylights. Have those things been fixed?
In the first area, when you first come in, is that the area you're referring to? The tiles that were up on those ceilings, which are those glued, those are not asbestos. Those are just ceiling tile. That's how they did. Now, the mastic probably that attached probably had some, but new drop ceilings are through that area. Well, we've planned for new drop ceilings. That was not part of the scope of this project, so that is something that we've designed for to be done through a major repair project probably this next summer. That was not in the scope of this bond project.
So, but those are
The only,
scheduled to be.
the only thing we did in that commons area was painting. So, but we have identified work that needs to take place in that area, and it is listed. In fact, we've already had that designed, that piece as far as laying in ceiling tile through that area to clean that
That
up
will take place this summer. Is that what you mentioned?
next summer. Yes.
Dr. Prater?
With the safe rooms, is there a mechanism to open the safe rooms up to the community if there's a weather incident that requires it? Do we have any ability to do that?
Well, what happens, the way that we have this set up currently is as soon as a tornado watch is put in place, then staff is notified. We have a list for each site of 5 people that are on a list on call, if you will. So as soon as a watch is put in place through our school police dispatch, those individuals will be notified. They will then go to the site. Their job at that point is just to make sure all the supplies and all those things are ready and the area is prepared and somebody's there on standby. So as soon as an actual tornado, when it goes from a watch to a warning, that's when we actually open the doors for the community. And there's a specific time limit. I need to double check, but there's a specific time limit of how many minutes we leave that open because we're actually in a warning at that point, and then those doors are closed. Now, during school operation, it would just be for staff and students within the facilities. It's the after hours where it'd be opened up to the community.
When I was reviewing these numbers earlier, and you spoke to it already, there was some angst on the board about the change that we asked you and you asked us to initiate on the scope of Westport. And you reassured us that things were coming in better than you'd hoped, and we hopefully would be in good shape. And I congratulate you for being able to do that, because that's
Thank you.
nice to
Well,
see.
I want to thank our project managers for all their hard work and cooperation with staff has been outstanding.
Are there any other questions of Mr. Wendt? Thank you.
Maybe on that note, could you make a comment about the preparation of Studi?
Studi's coming right along. We've run into a little bit of a snag, if you will, with some issues with redoing the parking lot, but that's been addressed, and they're still on target for completing the site work there at Studi by August 1st, and the internal work, which really is in the library portion of the building, is the majority of it. So it's all coming right along and should be completed by August 1st, excuse me.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our section 4, action items for separate consideration. 8.01, the technology bond project vendor selection for network update project has been pulled from the agenda. So we'll go on to 8.02, trash collection service.
Mr. Everett, please.
The action item before you is for trash collection service and commingled recycling. 2 bids were received and opened on July 2nd, and a bid tabulation sheet is attached. The contract allows for 2 renewal periods, and the bid includes commingled recycling capacity at every location. The fiscal note, the contract is for $104,755.60. Is funded from the trash collection service line item in the custodial services budget. This represents a reduction of $22,834 to the current annual base fee. Our recommendation is that the board awards the contract to Waste Corporation of Missouri in the amount of $104,755.60. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Everest? Mrs. Bush?
I'm still confused why one of the numbers was multiplied by 52 and the other by 48.
Sure. When we received this in, prior to actually receiving the bids, WCA contacted us to clarify the amount of weeks in the year. Basically, and I'm not sure where this came from, but their question was, is it all right for us to consider 4 weeks in a year for 48 weeks, or 4 weeks in a month for 48 weeks? Why that was, I'm not sure. So there was confusion right from the very beginning, so we spent a lot of time trying to confirm where we were trying to get to. The bid tab that you see the weekly rates, again, in Republic Services is for 52 weeks. WCA, what that rate is if you take their rate divided by 4 instead of divided by 4.33. So our initial concerns were, okay, are they just bidding for 48 weeks? And then there's going to be an additional price for 4 weeks. What actually happened? So the purchasing department then confirmed the monthly rates and annual rates with both companies because we wanted to make sure we were comparing apples to apples and make sure we were getting what the rate would be. So in that regard, to actually pull that backwards, if you take the annual rate and divide it by 52 weeks, WCA's would be just over $2,000. I think it came up to $2,011 per week. We allowed the 48 week and we left that in the bid tab totals so that you could see that. I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I need a big crayon.
It's good.
How many weeks do you need to have trash service? And why didn't you just bid, we need 52, we need 48, we need 43? Why didn't you say, we want this many weeks of trash service and ask for that as a total?
We actually, because it's going to be determined every year. I mean, we're going to have an estimate. What we do is figure out what the 52-week rate would be, and then we back that off. The confusing part comes in again with the weeks. That's why we spent the time to actually confirm what the annual and monthly rates were going to be.
But they're
with each
52 weeks
Sure.
in the year.
And WCA assures us that that's the same point we had and the same issue we had. WCA assures us that no, that's just, they did that because they
so
bill.
they're saying, excuse me, they're saying that total, even though it was multiplied by 48, will provide 52
Right.
weeks of service.
That's right.
And that was our concern, and that's what we wanted to confirm with both to make sure we were comparing apples to apples.
Okay. So just to clarify, sorry.
sure.
So they're going to give 52 weeks for $76,713.40. Correct? Even though
70.
you got to that point by multiplying it by 48.
So the 76,000 is the trash price, yes.
Oh, okay. But that's
Trash
for
and
50
recycling, the total would
But
be
that's for
104.
52 weeks of service.
52 weeks, yes.
And what was confusing was you multiplied it by 48 to get that number. That's where I'm getting confused.
Exactly, and we left that the way it was because WCA specifically asked beforehand for whatever reason that.
There will be 52 weeks.
Right, and we did confirm that.
Mr. Lee?
Did the bid document ask for the annual contract, a weekly contract, or what the service did we ask to compare?
It asked for the weekly rates to
we
determine
asked
what
for a
the
weekly
what
rate.
the annual amount would be.
So the discrepancy is what we define as a year, basically.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we're getting 52 weeks for this price.
We were as well.
Any other questions from the board? I know that the speaker raised the issue, and I hope, has it been explained to the other company? How? No, I'm asking our staff member.
We explained what the intent was and did not hear a response back. I verified with our purchasing manager to see if there was an official protest or if there was any dialogue, and he had not heard any. So,
But you do have a contract that's available that will state the services that you'll get.
yes.
I have a question.
Dr. Frederick?
With the differences in the services, does both companies equal in terms of what they do for the education aspect for the district. For example, the once a month, the trucks that go to the schools to educate the children on recycling process and free recycling bins and monthly weigh-ins of recycled materials. Is that equal?
That part I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure if that was in the bid or not as far as the additional services.
Members of the board, Dr. Ritter. Basically, the service, as with any contractor, first let's clarify, this was not an RFP, so it was an IFB, so it's more treated like a commodity versus a service. So we've addressed that to where we're considering next time this probably should be an RFP if we want to consider more of the services offered, and then we can weight those services and make sure we're getting, the bang for the buck. But in the past 3 times it's been posted as an invitation for bid, so it's handled more like, buying a product versus a service. So with that in mind, Allied, now Republic Services, has had it for 3 years. They've done a great job. That's not been a concern as far as service. WCA had it before Allied Services. So again, we have bumps in the road with all potential contractors, but we communicate, we get them worked out. The recycling, WCA was really kind of instrumental in our test sites, and we did 7 test sites, and they kind of helped design it. And then when the bids came in, Allied at the time was a lower bid, so we went with Allied. So they're all familiar with the service that we're needing, and we have actually addressed very specific things like the plastic carts that we have at our houses for the paper because it's too heavy and we don't need any workman's comp injuries. So that's some of those little things that we needed to address. So it is in the contract, and those expectations will be, held up.
So with this particular kind of the IFP versus the RFP, a lot of those other factors that sometimes we can give weight to in terms of considering a bid are not involved in an IFP. An IFP is totally focused on low bid. Is that what?
Lowest responsible bid.
Lowest responsible bid. So, and we are convinced that even with the discrepancy in terminology, that the weekly, the overall, at this point, we're considered with what's in the overall contract is lower with WCA than it is with Republic Services.
We verified that independently, yes, with each what their annual rate would be because of the discrepancy initially of how they calculated the weeks.
Is there a motion?
I'll move the board award the contract to Waste Corporation of America for 104,755.60.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Dr. Prater, seconded by Mr. Lee, that the board awards the contract to Waste Corporation of Missouri in the amount of $104,755.60. Everyone voted? Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to routine action items. Is there a motion that the board approve these in one motion, that the board approves each of the routine action items as submitted by the administration?
So moved.
Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Dr. Frederick, that the board approves each of the routine action items as submitted.
I just have a question because I'm still
Yeah.
learning. When it comes to personnel election separations, et cetera, and they have new what appears to be teachers without an education degree, are those not teachers? I'm just trying to understand the terminology.
Mr. Parker, can you?
I need to know what specifically you're looking at, which person or
Well, there were a number that said no experience teachers, and then it just said they'd have a degree in something other than education.
Well, that's probably accurate. Is your question, what is your question about that? Is that a
Are those teacher positions? Are those some other position that?
If the heading is teacher, they have an entire section on the agenda.
So you do hire some classroom teachers without an education degree?
As long as they have the ability to become certified.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That's possible.
What percentage?
I'd have to get back to you.
Pretty
And,
low. wouldn't
and
it?
is that
Yeah, I would. It's safe to say it's very low.
is that because they bring unique skills, or because there aren't enough
It could
certified
be, or
teachers?
it could be that they've gone through a different educational program post-secondary after the completion of a different degree. They've gone back to gain additional coursework, pedagogy or instruction that allowed them to become certified. Maybe a career change. It might be unique experience.
Do you those people with education degrees come up the top usually of your list, and then
In the interview process?
Yeah.
I would say each position is unique depending on the needs of that position, but
Okay.
generally, for general education, I think it's safe to say that because such a high percentage of our selected candidates have those education backgrounds, that they are near the top of the list.
okay,
But
thank
if
you.
they had passed the praxis test or something like that, it would still list them as not having the education degree, right? But they'd still be certified?
Correct. Just the
Okay.
format of the agenda identifies what their degree is.
Yeah.
In. It just, whatever their actual degree major was.
But they would still have the proper certification to teach within the district, teach within Missouri.
And teach within that content area. They have to be highly qualified under the state's definition, which all of those components are spelled out specifically.
Thank you.
The motion's in front of you to vote.
Have my vote thing didn't show up.
You've already
Yeah,
voted.
You're up there.
You've already voted.
You
Oh,
voted
we
aye.
already did it. Sorry.
Welcome to Florida.
Good. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Okay. We will now move on to the section of public comments to address non-agenda items. Just remind our speakers, and we have 5 of them tonight. 4 of them, it appears, on the same subject, so I would ask them to be respectful of not repeating the previous speaker. And then the gentleman that wanted to speak on the agenda item that was pulled. So with that, you have 3 minutes to address the board, and our first speaker is Ralph Plank.
Hello, appreciate it. Wanted to say I was an elected school board member from 98 to 2004, and also wanted to say I helped start the Boyd Back to School Social 18 years ago. I want to invite the board and administration, like we do every year, to come. It's the August 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. in Washington Park. So we'd like to invite everyone. Tonight we'd like to bring your attention to the Collins Kohler House at 1110 North Jefferson that R12 wants to demolish to gain a few parking places. This property was designated a local historic site in 1990, is part of the National Register Midtown Historic District, and is a contributing structure to the district. It is a beautiful architectural example of a Queen Anne cottage. The Midtown Neighborhood Association Board asks R12 to save the house in its present location and find other parking options for Central High School. This proposed demolition would be inconsistent with the current Midtown Neighborhood Plan adopted in 2001. The Midtown Plan is now part of the Springfield Greene County Comprehensive Plan, a legal document that guides the use in the county and city. The Midtown Plan was developed with years of public process that involved institutions and residents of the area, including R12. This resolution conveys obligations for these groups to preserve the single-family character of properties in the neighborhood and to preserve the irreplaceable architectural structures therein. Specifically, the Midtown Plan calls for Central's northern boundary to not extend beyond its present location. The Midtown Plan states, and I quote, Any organization with an interest in amending the Government Plaza area, which includes the 1100 block of North Jefferson, should work toward consensus on the appropriate use for the affected properties. Modification of the Midtown Plan would be required to accommodate any R12 or city utility expansion of Area 2, which is the 1100 block of North Jefferson. This means formal modification of the Springfield Greene County Comprehensive Plan requires public process and approval from Planning and Zoning and City Council. SPS has not done this. The Midtown Neighborhood Association would like to encourage the school board to secure the property as requested by the City Building Development Services and freeze all activities related to demolition. This would include requests to Planning and Zoning and Landmarks Board. This would allow time for discussion between SPS, City of Springfield, Midtown Neighborhood Association, and other interested parties in the next few weeks to find solutions to preserve this significant historic structure in its present location. There is a buyer speaking tonight who is interested in purchasing the property. We appreciate the many ways that SPS has demonstrated commitment to our community and Midtown in the past, and trust that our dialogue going forward will help facilitate saving the Collins Color House in its present location according to the Midtown Plan. Thank you.
Right at 3 minutes, Mr.
I
Plank. I'm
timed it out.
impressed.
Hey, I've done this before.
Been here before, haven't you?
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. And I'd like to just quickly introduce our next speaker, which is Mary Collette, who served 8 years on the City Council during the time of the Midtown Plan.
Okay, yeah, go.
And she recently received the state's most prestigious historic preservation award, the McReynolds Award.
Mrs. Collette. Ms. Collette. I never know. I said I never know how people want to be referred to.
No.
Mrs. Collette.
Mary is fine.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Ritter. I'm here, I guess if I knew how to preach, I would be here to preach to the choir about the importance of our historic resources, which of course the Midtown Neighborhood Association is the city's first residential neighborhood association to be designated as a local and a federal historic residential district. You all know better than anybody the importance of these resources. All you have to do is look at Central High School. I mean, it was slated for something different than what it is today, and thanks to you guys, I mean, we now have a beautiful historic resource that has been restored, added to, and is now, like, I think one of the high points I know in our neighborhood. I'm also a Midtown resident. I do live at 1539 North Washington as well in Midtown. And I know that you all are not aware of probably the Midtown Plan, and wow, I got 5 minutes. And everything that's in it and how important the boundaries of Midtown are. We spent a number of years working with all the institutions and around us and actually fighting to get the Midtown Plan in place. And what it does for us is it provides a vehicle to partner with all of our institutional neighbors. Our institutional neighbors have been responsible for loss of at least 400 of our residential properties in Midtown. We formed an urban conservation district only to lose 20% of our properties within the next 5 years. These resources are the types of things that people come to our community to see. They're the types of things that are irreplaceable. The fabric of our neighborhoods, especially our historic neighborhoods, each and every house that we have is irreplaceable. And so I think it behooves R12 to take that into consideration when you look at a demolition of a potential house that can house a family and kids that go to all of your schools. And remember that if that house goes and you can park a few cars there for the next 100 years, that house is just the first in a line of houses that will go. And for us as Midtown, it's really important for us to set that boundary, work with our institutional neighbors, and create the edge to Midtown between R12 and City Utilities and Drury and Cox North and Assemblies of God and OTC and all our institutional neighbors. It's really important that we all be on the same page with the boundaries of this neighborhood, this historic neighborhood, and with the importance of that, and with what we all can do to ensure that we have wonderful places and homes like that for our young families to move into in Center City and to take advantage of all the amenities that we now have in Center City, both downtown and on Commercial Street, which is another area I can point to as what a successful historic restoration can do for our community. So that's what I'm here to talk about. These are all important issues, and we want to partner with you guys, and we know that you were largely unaware.
Can you conclude your comments, please? Thank
Probably
you.
not, but yeah, I would be happy to. So we would just ask that you would freeze any conversation about demolition and work with us to preserve this home and all the others on the boundary that with R12. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Pete Radecki? Is the timer not working, Ms.?
I
okay.
bet she's gonna hit it for me.
I just want to be fair.
Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I could get long-winded. I wanted to just touch on the challenge of parking, and certainly all the institutions in the area are having parking issues. No doubt, if one was to just look at what it costs to purchase property, the cheapest way to build parking spaces is to buy a house, tear it down, and build parking spaces. And I think the two previous speakers spoke to the collaboration that took place over a long period of time to say, hey, we need to somehow put the skids on that the value of those properties is more than simply what the transaction cost is. I think what that means for all the large institutions in and around Midtown is we're going to have to gut up to more expensive parking, whether that's buying more expensive properties to the south, whether that's looking at collaboratively about parking structures or other kinds of things. But that's really my point is we have to somehow get beyond that, because it is a dominant. You buy one house after another, and before you know it, well, there isn't a Midtown anymore, and that hurts our neighborhood, not only our neighborhood but our city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but Jeannie? Is it Jeannie Ann?
Letting me speak. I've been out of the area for 30 years, living in Arkansas. I was the first graduating class of Glendale, and I'm a violinist. My principal symphony is in Fort Smith, Arkansas. At one time, I was a ballerina in Washington and Dallas, and I'm very aware of these special organizations that cities need to thrive. It's symphonies, ballets, opera, the arts, and Midtown. This is not a renewable resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. I found out about the Jefferson House quite by accident. A little yellow sign went up on the door, and I went up and read it and said, took me a while to find out who owned it and why we were tearing this Queen Anne cottage down. I'm on my third rehab on Clay Street, but this is the house that I was looking for. This is a very special house. There aren't very many of them left. I met with some lovely men at the school board. They were very helpful. They wanted me to try to move it. All right? 2 moving companies. One wants to cut it into 3 pieces and move it. One wants to move it in total, but only within 2-block radius, and there are no lots available. So now it has to remain where it is. That was before I knew about the Midtown plan or the boundaries. I would have tried to move it, but it really does need to belong on that lot. One of your mayors, I believe, lived in that house at one time, and I need for you to think about this. You can't replace these things. They're gone. Thank you.
Thank you. And then John Schwendeman.
I'll withdraw my request and let the protest process.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to make sure you were given the chance to talk if you wanted to before the board. Dr. Ritter, in terms of the speakers tonight that have all spoken on the same concern, I think certainly there's been some communication from individuals in the neighborhood to some of us on the board. I think there's been some communication to you.
Right.
Can you give us a take of where you plan to go from here?
No,
with that?
we're inviting that conversation, and we are learning as we go with the plan. This first time I saw the plan when Mr. Blank sent it to me. I appreciate that, and I think it's an excellent opportunity to enhance Center City and see what we can do to, as a team, as a group, improve that. And whatever that is going to be, I'm not sure, but I know city zoning. They've moved back their timeline as well to allow us to have more conversations. So we're going to do that.
Okay, and I guess what I would just ask is, I think that this was developed a while ago. I think there weren't too many of us on the board at that point. I don't think I was even on the board when it was approved, but I think this just shows collectively as an organization, we need to have a better way of having that information move, because I don't think any of the staff that were part of this were also aware. So I think it just shows how do we have that historical perspective move through the organization when there's changes. And I will attribute this misunderstanding or just lack of communication or lack of engagement, I guess is what I would say to that. And I'm thankful that we'll be able to step forward. I appreciate the speaker's perspective, and that's what it's all about. So
I think one thing that I've learned is that we need to have more conversation with the city as we purchase property. We don't do that enough, and so I think that's really where it starts. And so that's the conclusion that I have, and I think that's going to help us quite a bit because they were aware and reminded us of that.
All right, thank you. Moving on to section 11, legislative report.
Why do you look at me?
Well, I just kind of look at that end because
one thing I might report on, just for your interest, last week I spent 3 days in Washington meeting with our congressional delegation on several issues, reauthorization of ESEA and several nutrition acts and several other ones. Had some good conversation with them. That reauthorization may come this week, or it may go to the floor this week. I don't know where to go after that, but at least both sides of the House are trying to put something together. There's a House version and a Senate version, which are kind of apart. And the House version's pretty decent. The Senate version's not very good. So hopefully we can get something going with the House version to get this whole NCLB thing taken care of and done. One of the things that I'm not totally up to speed, there's some significant nutrition issues coming up and some legislation that's coming down the pike that I know that Mr. Went and Juanita and we need to have a discussion with to see the impact. They haven't done it yet, but it could significantly change the way we do some things, particularly extracurricular and things like that could impact the way organizations deal with it and some things of how we provide food. And so I think that's, as we get more information on that one, that needs to have that discussion at some point because it's fairly costly for what we're going to, there's a lot of discussion about it's a two-edged sword between you want healthy foods for these kids, but they're not eating them. So there's a lot of food getting thrown away because they're not eating them. And so it's a tough call with cost versus the benefit and how we deal with that. So, but it was a good trip. I would encourage, I know we're going to do it again next year. MSBA sponsored it. And I would encourage others to.
I was going to say, I know we talked at the board retreat last week about kind of strategically looking at where we spend our time and our resources that we have allocated for those types of things. And I think the beginning of the year it would be be really good to look at those opportunities and just make sure that a couple of us are on each of those trips.
It was worth the trip.
Yeah.
Based on what we heard and just some things that happened afterward, of bills came to the floor and we got phone calls from the congressman going, where do we need to go on this? So that paid for the trip, just right there. So now whether they did it or not, at least they called. Second one is what's on everybody's mind is House Bill 253, the tax cut bill. As most of you saw, the rhetoric started yesterday with editorial in the paper from the Missouri Chamber. And I don't know if all of you know, but I know Rex Springfield put in $1.3 million just to try to get the thing passed or get the veto overridden. So he's put about $1.3 million into the whole public relations, getting their story out. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of money to spend, so we need to work very hard with our legislators and the community that this is not a good thing for the state. We don't need to be chasing Kansas down the tubes. And so, but it's a tough decision because tax cut looks really good when the headlines show up. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, I think. Everybody's got an opinion. If Madam President, if you would allow me, I copied off some information. It's on the website. You can go to MSBA's website or the Coalition for Missouri's Future, which is one of the organizations that MSBA kind of put together to look at this. And this is just kind of the myth versus kind of a myth buster type thing. As you're talking to people, you're talking to community members or your legislators, either one, this might help answer some of the questions that seems to be out there about when it kicks in, who's it going to benefit, the fact that it'll take 500,000 new jobs to get back the tax revenue that we're going to lose. Well, we only have 2.6 million jobs in Missouri anyway, so that's pretty significant growth. So I just think it's important for us to be educated about it and be prepared to hopefully sometime before September take a position or hopefully bring a resolution to this board.
All right, next time.
At least everybody know what our position is. So
I think there also might be some value in starting to write our own letters to the editors or op-ed pieces, letting these kinds of facts be told. I think that there'd be some value having people hear that from local officials.
One other thing I want to mention is that I don't know if it's fortunate or not, I'm going to be serving on Steve Cookson's committee that's traveling the state. Not that I'm going to go to all those meetings, but there's about 30 members on that committee, and I think there's like 4 superintendents regionally picked, and so I'm going to serve the Southwest. So, and I'm not sure what their agenda. He heads up their education committee in the House, and they're doing a
special education.
Yeah, and it's
maybe
looking
nobody
at,
quite really knows. Well, good, Dr. Ritter, you can keep us up to date on what's actually going on there.
I think I'll try.
One note I might, with respect to 283, the governor is putting together a tour. They're getting around. I think there's 8, I believe, stops across the state that they're going to be. The governor will be having discussion about it and bringing people together, and we will be involved. I know MSBA will be involved in every one of them. So I don't know where they're going to come in Southwest Missouri. 6 of them have already been set up, but they're pretty much across central Missouri at this point. We haven't got them Southwest Missouri. So when that comes, I'll make sure the board and everybody gets the dates and locations, and hopefully we can attend, and certainly we're going to participate and do that. So I forgot to mention that.
Great. Anything else under legislative? Anything that board members interested in bringing up under future issues? Anything under the generic other category?
I would bring up something that the board might be interested in. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'm on a DESE committee that's looking at the whole accredited with distinction discussion about recognizing districts, and they've created a super level, if you want to kind of, it's over and above accredited with distinction for these high performing districts, and it's creating a lot of heartburn within the education community on how you. It's kind of a done deal, I think. It's now we're just trying to figure out how do we make it work, but it's really kind of mixing oil and water together when you start talking about accreditation versus high performing recognition. They don't really go together. We need to be dealing with accreditation and then recognizing the high-performing boards somewhat separately. I don't know what you're going to hear. You'll start hearing some stuff, I'm sure, down the road. But this thing makes 4 categories now for, was it, unaccredited, provisionally accredited, now you're really accredited. So I don't know what term, they haven't come up with a term for it yet, but it's basically creating another line between districts that I'm not sure is a positive way to do it. So you'll be hearing some more stuff about that coming up.
I have a couple of ribbon cuttings to announce. On Monday, August 5th at 6 o'clock will be Jeffries, and so that'll be 6 in the evening, not in the morning, just for those that are early mornings.
August 5th?
Yes, August 5th, and then the Westport will be August 6th. And that'll be at 3 o'clock, and that's the same day as a board meeting, so it'll be 3 o'clock a ribbon cutting, and you come on over here. So.
And I guess what I'd just like to say there is if we could each let Kathy know if we're planning on being there, because I'd like to make sure that there would be at least 2 or 3 board members if we can. I understand that it's the middle of the day, but one of them is. But great. It's nice to see all that work that the community supported pay off. So, Mr. Renner.
You know, we had our board retreat and we talked about mission, vision, goals, and you know, we talk about data, and I get real not confused, but I get overwhelmed by the amount of data that's there as we look at achievement or test scores and which test scores we're going to look at and how there's individual units or classrooms that need to look at certain things, but are there things that as a board we could hang our hat on? Is it really graduation rate and dropout rate? Because if that's what it is, some of those don't have anything to do with achievement. I mean, they really don't. They have to do with other issues that we deal with. Those are important things. Is it reading at the 3rd grade level? Is that really where we're going to focus? Or are we going to look at all of the data, whether it's state test scores, whether it's our own achievement tests that we give? Is it going to be as children enter our district? Because I think I don't want to speak for anybody else, I just get overwhelmed sometimes by the amount that's there. And I think sometimes there could be some things that as a board we could say, here are the things we're going to focus on. Now, we know there's a lot of things that get to there, but that's not something, I'm not interested in a 3rd, 2nd grade teacher scores at 1 degree. That's not what I'm interested in, or that's not what the board's interested in. Now, I don't know if we can get there or not because, as we heard reports last year, there's all kinds of data, but it all kind of gets to exactly where, as a board, are we going to focus, and because otherwise we could just have tons of discussion, and there really is so much out there. I'm not sure we could come to the conclusion that here are the 3 things that we're really going to focus on, but maybe we could, or 5 or 10. I mean, that's minuscule compared to the amount of data that's there. So I'd just like for us to think about that, to say if we're going to look at this next school year, at what points are we going to want data on those issues? And then as we've talked about budget, already in our input in December. Does that have anything to do with data? And it should, to me, have everything to do with it. So I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the amount, and then where we're going to go and how we're going to say, here's where we're going to focus, and here's how we're going to determine if we're being successful or trying or making progress toward a goal.
I may respond a little bit. We are going to be bringing the strategic plan to the board for approval, and I think that would be a good time. And also, we're having that same conversation, by the way. And if not,
Are you talking about then we would be able to pull different aspects of those measures
to
and
help,
that we would pay
help with
attention
supporting,
to?
Yeah, help support the indicators, and we have certain measures. And so we were talking about how best to inform the board, and now this is our opportunity to do that. So I think
Do you think
in
that
August,
would address what you're talking about,
think
Mr. Renner? Have a discussion around that, like how we're going to use the strategic plan specifically.
And what we're going to look at.
I think that's a good idea.
I'll be bringing then to the board then the goals, the indicators, and then we'll just have the measures there for conversation. So be good.
Can I ask a question? The other thing I heard is you'd almost like those calendared so that you would know that October you would be looking at that. Did I hear that piece too? I just want to capture that.
I mean,
I'm not trying to lock you in,
Yeah,
but I'm hearing you want some regularity.
Right.
on certain items rather than 500.
Well, we know that certain data comes to us at certain
Yeah.
times of the year
Yeah.
based on when we get that, and I think
Data when it's fresh.
data when it's fresh, and then maybe specifically tied to what we are focusing on.
Yeah, what we as a board agree to focus on.
Great, thank you for bringing that up. Just a reminder to do your plus deltas. I think that's how we'll get better at working as a team, not only as board members, but also with the administration. Is there anything else to bring before the board? You got the financial operations report under separate cover, and we do not need to go into executive session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Are you able to vote on that? Yeah, okay.
No, we don't vote on that.